Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. So, in the last part, we have completed up to step number 118 that we have installed our vCenter server with this stage 2. Okay, so now let's move on to the next step. I will just give you a brief idea. In this part, we will access our vCenter server and we will configure some of the parameters for vCenter server. But before going to the actual practical steps, let's see how our vCenter server looks like as a nested VM. So I'm coming back to my DC system first, and if you remember that we have hosted this particular vCenter server as a VM, nested VM on our ESX host 01, right? So I'm just logging with my credentials on ESX host 01. So I will put in my root credentials. Okay, clicking on home, and you can see over here there is virtual machine 1, it is showing, right? And the name is VMware vCenter server. This is the nested VM what we have installed as a vCenter server. Okay, so if I'm clicking on it, it is showing me the console over here. I'm clicking on it again to maximize the view, and you can see over here this is our vCenter server virtual machine, right? So this is currently on. Okay, but this is a Linux based console and we need to access it through our web console, correct? So I will close this window first, let it run in the background, and we will open a fresh session. We will come back to our PPT now for the next step. Okay, so next step is we need to access our vCenter server through web browser. So we need to open the URL as https vcenterserver.esxlab.local:443. So 443 is a port used by vCenter server as a default communication port. So here I can give the FQDN also and I can give the IP also. Okay, so as of now I'm just trying to enter the FQDN. Let's see what happens. Let's verify. Yes, let's see. And if this is coming, this prompt is coming, that means this site is working. So I will say advance, accept risk, and here it is showing the getting started page. Okay, so this is our FQDN vCenterServer.esxlab.local. If you remember, we have created our NS record also, DNS record for this particular FQDN, right? That's why it is working correctly as of now. Okay, so now let's move on to our next step. So next step is we need to click on launch vSphere client option. Okay, so let's see what happens. Launch vSphere client. So it will launch and it will give a login prompt. So now we can log in with our VMware vSphere. Okay, but there is a catch over here. Let's see. So next is obviously at the first attempt I will try to log in with root credentials, right? So let's see what happens. And now you can see over here error, unable to log in because you do not have permission on any vCenter server system connected to this client. Okay, so by default, even if your root account is not having access permission to log in to vCenter server. Okay, so this particular error I wanted to show you, so that's why I've deliberately logged in with root account. Okay, so let's see what is a workaround for this. So as I said, note down the login permission error. So we have already seen this particular error. Now we will resolve it. Okay, so next is we need to install putty or the SSH client for Windows from official site, and we need to install it on our Win 2022 DC system. Okay, so I'm coming back here. First of all, what I will do is I'll go to my DC system, go to the settings, and I will go to my CD drive and I will map my VMware tools CD, because in that CD I have put in the extra utilities also. So VMware tools, I will say okay. So now our ISO has been mounted. I will come back to my Win 2022 DC system and I'll go to the Explorer, and here I have copied this putty also. So I will just double click on it, and so in this Win 2022 DC we will just install our putty client. So putty client is an SSH client through which you can access command prompt or the SSH session for any Linux based or Unix based system which is supporting your SSH connectivity. So it's a simple client that is helpful for managing your Linux based or Unix based systems through SSH console. Okay, so our putty client has been finished installation. Now let's move on to our next step. So next step is we need to make sure, it's a simple optional step but still it is important. We need to make sure that on Win 2022 DC system our Windows firewall is disabled completely for all three options, so that our SSH client communication should go smooth. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to my control panel, Windows Defender firewall, and 1, 2 and 3, all threes are disabled, so that's fine. Let's move on. So next is on Windows 2022 DC system, open putty or your SSH client interface. So I'll come back here, and this is a putty app. I will just pin it to taskbar and I will open it. Okay, next is we need to enter our vCenterServer IP or host name and click open to start the SSH session for our vCenterServer. Okay, so our IP for the vCenterServer is 192.168.1.25 if you remember, and the connection type is SSH, port is 22. This is fine, and I will say open. Okay, so in the next step we need to click accept on security alert window. So I will say accept. And next is we need to log in as root and enter the root password to start the SSH session on vCenterServer. So here our root credential will work over here. Okay, so I will say root. I think it has closed down, but no problem. We will again re-log in. And now we will log in with root. And now you can see we have logged in with the root account in vCenterServer SSH session. I hope I am clear. So the next step is on command prompt. We need to type shell and hit enter to start the bash session. So bash session is something which is allowing you to change system parameters of your Linux or Unix system. So we need to start the bash session first, but for that we need to enter the shell and enter. So I will put shell, enter. Okay, so shell access has been granted to root. Okay, so as I said, session will display a message that shell access is granted to root. So this is done. So next is now on root shell or bash prompt, we need to enter one command and hit enter. So this command, I will just explain you what this command will do. Okay, but first of all, let's go back to our session and I will copy this command directly from here. /user/lib/vmware, then vm directory bin vmc admin tool. So this admin tool is allowing us to change some system parameters. Okay, so now I have just pasted this particular command over here and I will hit enter, and now you can see it has given us some 7-8 choices for changing some parameters or testing some connectivities and all. Okay, now next step is we need to press 3 and then enter to reset the vCenterServer's default administrator account password. Okay, now our vCenterServer can be logged in through SSO account. If you remember, we have given that SSO account parameters while installing your vCenterServer. So we need to now reset the password of that local admin account of our vCenterServer. So there is an option, the third one, reset account password. So I will put 3 over here and enter. Okay, now it is asking us for the account UPN. Okay, so what account UPN we need to enter? So we need to enter as administrator at vSphere.local and hit enter. So I'm just typing that. So administrator at vSphere.local. Okay, and I will hit enter. Now it will generate some random password. So this is very, what do you say, a clutchy password, you cannot remember it or something. So what I'm doing is I'm just copying it for my reference. Okay, and let's delete this one, and then what I'm doing is I'm just noting it down on a notepad so that you can use it later on. Okay, so this is a random password over here, so let it be like that. Let's move on to the next step. So next step is note down the temporary password generated by the system. So that we have already done, right? So next step is exit the vCenter server's putty session by typing exit and hitting enter twice. Okay, so now our putty sessions work has been done, so we will come out of it. Okay, now let's move on to the next step. Now we will again go back to our browser session for our vCenter server. So open your browser and access following site to start the vCenter server's web console. So again vCenterServer.esxlab.local slash colon 443. So I'm coming back here. I'll close this session, close everything and reopen. We will reopen. So vCenter server dot esxlab dot local colon 443. Okay, enter. This is launch vSphere client. Okay, again we have to click on launch vSphere client. Okay, again it will give us this login screen. Now let's see. So next step is on VMware vSphere vCenter server login page, enter following credentials. So what credentials we need to enter? Account will be administrator at vSphere.local and password will be our temporary password which has been generated in the previous step, and hit enter. So I will put in that credential over here. Remember, we are not putting the root account over here. We are putting the administrator at vSphere. So this is administrator at vSphere.local, right? Same thing, right? Let me just make it on a small. Sometimes in Linux it may be case sensitive, so that's fine. Administrator at vSphere.local and the password now which we have noted down in the previous step. So I will just copy this, paste it. And now you can see we are able to log into our vCenter server. So this is the temporary password. Still this is a temporary password what we have generated. So let's move on to the next step. So next step is, now since this is a very clutchy password or a temporary password, we need to change this password to a permanent one, right? So once logged in, click on account symbol and change password. So we'll come back here. So this is our home screen of our vCenter server. We will see different options over here later on. But as of now, what I'm doing is I'm clicking on this account option and there is an option called change password. So I will change password. So current password I have just copied, so I will say paste and the new password I will put in. And I will say confirm. Okay. So now we have changed our vCenter server administrator at vSphere.local accounts password to a specific one. Okay, let's move on to the next step. So change your temporary password to a permanent and unique one. So this is what we have already done. And next step is log out and log in again with the new password for taking effect. So what I'm doing is I'm coming back here on my vCenterServer's login page. I will say log out, and then I will re-log in with the new account, so password. So I'm just reopening the login screen, and here I need to type administrator at vSphere.local, and our new password. And now you can see it has been logged in with your new password. Okay, so in this part we have seen how to configure our vCenter server for the first login, how to change the password, how to reset the password, and remember one important thing: you cannot log in with root account to your vCenter server's web console. You can log in with SSH session with help of root, but not with the web console. Okay, so let's complete this part, and in the next part we will see how to create our content library, how to create a new virtual machine through our vCenter server.